Good morning and thanks for joining me today. I want to consider some of the great men in history that have made flat earth more pronounced and what it is today. In our today's movement, you cannot do without the contribution of these great men who spend their time trying to bring to the consciousness of most of us, or most people who live then, that the earth is indeed flat. They fought against all powers. They ensured that the message was passed, even though it wasn't considered seriously. But today, as you and I live and are awakened to the truth, we must do everything possible to ensure that what they started would achieve a great end. Let's look at William Carpenter. William Carpenter, who was born on 25th February 1830 and died on the 1st of September 1896, was an English printer and author and a proponent of the flat earth theory. He was active in England and the United States in the 19th century. Carpenter immigrated to the United States and continued his advocacy for the flat earth movement. Carpenter was a passionate advocate of the flat earth theory, which holds that the earth is not a globe, but a flat square which revolves on the central axis with the sun stationary over the center. Carpenter, a printer, originally from Greenwich, England, published Theoretical Astronomy, Examined and Exposed, proving the earth not a globe, in 8 parts from 1864 under the name Common Sense. He later immigrated to Baltimore, where he published 100 proofs the earth is not a globe in 1885. Carpenter argued, among other things, that there are rivers that flow for hundreds of miles towards the level of the sea without falling more than a few feet. Notably, the Nile River, which in 1,000 miles falls but a foot. A level expanse of this extent is quite incompatible with the idea of the earth's convexity. It is therefore a reasonable proof that the earth is not a globe. If the earth were a globe, a small model globe would be the very best, because the truest thing for the navigator to see with him. But such a thing as that is not known. With such a toy as a guide, the mariner would wreck his ship of a certainty. This is a proof that the earth is not a globe. Carpenter was a proponent of the English writer Samuel Bailey Robertson, who lived from 1816 to 1885, who produced a pamphlet with Carpenter's assistants called Synthetic Astronomy in 1849, arguing for a flat earth, and published results of many experiments that stated the curvatures of water over a long drainage ditch, followed by another called the inconsistency of modern astronomy and its opposition to the scripture. Robertson also produced studies, mostly printed by Carpenter, that purported to show the effect of ships disappearing below the horizon could be explained by the laws of perspective in relation to the human eye. Some of his principal works were found commercially published, but many were printed, bound, and sold by himself, at times under the pen name Common Sense. An incomplete list include Communion with Ministering Spirit, William Herschel, in 1858. The Earth Not a Globe by Common Sense, a poem, London, Job Caldwell, 1864. Sir Isaac Newton's Theoretical Astronomy, examined and refuted by Common Sense, 1867. Something About Spiritualism, a reply to Professor Harry's Ipswich lecture to working men, London, Job Caldwell, 1865, and many others. Alright, now let's look at Samuel Bailey Robertham. Robertham, who lived between 1816 and 1884, was an English inventor and a writer who wrote Synthetic Astronomy, Earth Not a Globe, under the pseudonym Parallax. His work was based on his decade-long studies of Earth and was originally published as a 16-page pamphlet in 1849, which he later expanded into a 430-page book in 1881. Robertham's method, which he calls synthetic astronomy, models the Earth as an enclosed plane centered at the North Pole and bounded along its perimeter by a wall of ice, with the sun, moon, planets, and other stars moving only several hundred miles above the surface of the Earth. Robertham started out as an organizer of an Owenite commune in the Fens, where he formulated his theories about the Earth. After measuring the lack of curvature on the long straight drainage ditches of the Bedford level in his first Bedford level experiment, he was convinced of the flatness of the Earth and began to lecture on the topic. It took a little time to learn his trade, running away from a lecture in Blackburn when he couldn't explain why the hulls of ships disappeared before their masts when sailing out to sea. However, as he persisted in filling hulls by charging a sixpence a lecture, his quick-wittedness and debating skills were honed so much that he could counter every argument with ingenuity, wit, and consummate skills. When finally pinned down to a challenge in Plymouth in 1864 by allegations that he wouldn't agree to a test, Parallax appeared on Plymouth Hall at the appointed time. Witnessed by Richard A. Proctor, a writer on astronomy, and proceeded to the pitch where a telescope had been set up. His opponent had claimed that only the lantern of the Eddystone Lighthouse, some 14 miles out to sea, would be visible. In fact, only half the lantern was visible, yet Robertham claimed his opponents were wrong, and that it proved the Earth was indeed flat, so that many Plymouth folks left the hole agreeing that some of the most important conclusions of modern astronomy had been seriously invalidated. In 1861, Robertham married for a second time to the 16-year-old daughter of his laundress and settled in London, producing fortunate children, of whom 4 survived. He was also alleged to be using the name Dr. Samuel Bailey Robertham, living in the beautiful 12-roomed house, selling the secret for prolonging human life and curing every disease imaginable. Augustus de Morgan refers to him as S. Golden. He patented a number of inventions, including a life-preserving cylindrical railway carriage. His book, Synthetic Astronomy, The Earth Not a Globe, appeared in 1864. His lectures continued, and the concerned citizens addressed letters to the Astronomer Royal seeking rebuttals of his claims. A correspondent to the Leeds Times observed that one thing he did demonstrate was that scientific dabblers unused to perform advocacy are unable to cope with a man, but clever and thoroughly used up in his theory, thoroughly alive to the weakness of his opponents.